like to make it known that this firearm is empty from any ammunition. I took removed the plunger out of the tube fed magazine, or the tube mag, and I also did a finger sweep of the breech. Everything is clear and the action is locked in the open position. So moving on, this particular firearm is a Marlin Firearms Company Model 60 SB, which stands for stainless barrel. It is chambered in .22 long rifle, and that is the only round that this particular rifle can, .22 rifle can fire out of it. It can't do .22 shorts or anything like that. This is the micro groove barrel model, which in the detailed portion of that, which we'll get into in the next part, but Marlin actually put 16 land and groove cuts inside the barrel. So, talking about the year of manufacture, it actually took me a little bit to find the trick to narrow down the year that this firearm was made. And after some research, I found a website called Tin Can Bandit, and it is a blog spot, which I'll be attaching all of these links. And the date of this article was in 2020, and the title is How to Date Your Marlin Model 60 Rifle. And so after reading that article, it kind of gave you a breakdown of the different years that this firearm was made, and it was made from, the 80s until 2020, I believe, is the last date, and per Marlin, that is. So to get this specific manufacture date, you take the first two numbers of the serial number, which are 05 on this particular rifle, and you subtract that from 100, giving you the answer of 95, making the date of manufacture 1995. So this gun is over 20 years old, and it is one of the later Model 60s that were made. Moving to the action type, the action is a self-loading straight blowback operation action with right side ejection. The receiver has a serrated non-glare finish. The receiver is actually held to the stock by one of the action assembly screws, and it'd be the front one. The rear one doesn't actually hold it in there. It just holds the actual trigger assembly up into the stock of the firearm. And in later models, there was an additional screw added behind the rear screw, and I'll show you that in the next part. And it's just a screw. It doesn't have any purpose. The only thing it does is reinforce the wrist of the stock. The receiver is grooved for a scope mount, and this rifle did have a scope on it previous to this video, but I took it off just because I knew that I would be field stripping the firearm, and I didn't want to have to remove it in one of the videos just because it was in the way. This firearm does have a crossbolt safety. The earlier models of the Model 60s didn't have bolt hold open on the last shot, but this particular firearm, on the last shot, when it runs out of the last cartridge, it will lock open to visually see that you are out of ammunition. And that didn't start until after the 1980s. So it is a hammer gun, and the hammer is obviously just in the internal guts. So we will see that part whenever we get to the field strip portion. But that is, it does have a hammer to create the ignition to the primer. The trigger is a 2-stage trigger design, and the feeding mechanism is an attached tubular magazine with a capacity of 14 plus 1 in the chamber. This firearm also has a semi-buckhorn rear adjustable ramp sight and a standard hooded front sight, which this rifle's missing the hood. They were clip-on hoods, and they slide on and slide off really easy, so they were easily lost. YouTube for some videos of reviews and a step-by-step process for a field strip on this firearm, as well as firearmsguide.com for the actual schematics and user manual, which I'll be attaching. Also used militaryhistory.fandom.com, and it is a blog spot on specific firearm topics, and just so happens they did one on the Marlin Model 60. I looked at a Wikipedia link on the Model 60. I'm attaching it. I didn't use it just because Wikipedia to me isn't a reliable resource to solely go off of. Like I said, marlin.com. Alright, we're back for the next part, which is part number 2. And this is the action type and the cycle of operations as it pertains to this specific firearm. So like I said in the last part, This is a straight blowback action. It is self-loading from a tubular magazine. You have your bolt handle, ejection port, your trigger assembly, and here's your attached tubular magazine. In this specific gun, cycle of operations wise, I did reassure that this firearm is clear of any live ammunition or any ammunition in the attached magazine previous to this video, and I did reinsert the plunger into the magazine well just for video purposes, but the firearm is completely clear. So to start the cycle of operations, we're going to act like our magazine is fresh, freshly topped off. Like I said, it is a 14 plus 1 magazine capacity, and this rifle is only suited for 22 long rifle ammunition. So from this point, this action does have a feature that on your last round of ammunition, it will automatically lock open to visually cue you that you are out of ammunition. It does have a cross bolt safety, and it does eject out of the right side. So, starting with, in theory, a freshly topped off magazine, we would push this receiver latch here to close the bolt and close the breech, which would also feed a, okay. We're going to push this button to close the bolt and close the breech. Maybe. If I can hit this button right. Well, I was just playing with it. There we go. So, now that our breech is closed, that wouldn't have loaded a fresh round into the chamber. That we are just doing that to start our cycle of operations. So, as we begin, our trigger would be in the decompress phase. Oops. Don't want that to happen. Ever. I'm just going to lay that rifle right there for just a second. I'm going to have to turn, put it back in the position that I needed. And it's giving me problems because I have it clamped in here a little weird to be able to show the action. There you go. Okay, trigger is now decompressed, and we are ready to perform the cycle of operations. So, we would charge the bolt handle, pulling it to the most rearward, and this action is super stiff because this rifle is super dirty and long overdue for cleaning. So, start again. We're going to charge the bolt handle all the way to the rear position, which would initiate the feeding process where a lifter would lift a fresh round into the breech. And then we would close the breech, which would strip around from the lifter into the chamber, and now that would be closed and or locked and complete the chambering part of the cycle of operations. Now that would bring you into the firing sequence, which the user would then fire the weapon. Upon the firing process happening, the gases would equalize in the chamber, and the energy from the round would then take effect on the bolt carrier assembly and move it to the rearwardest position, extracting, ejecting the round, as well as feeding a new round, because it is a semi-automatic rifle in action. This cycle of operations would happen automatically until the rifle was out of ammunition in the feeding mechanism, and on the last round this would stay locked in the open position, signifying an empty magazine. I think I forgot to mention, after the rifle is locked, chambered, fed, locked, chambered, triggers pulled, which starts the unlocking phase in this rifle. And again, so unlocking, extracting, ejecting, feeding, closing, locking, firing, and so on until the rifle either malfunctions or your tube-fed magazine is empty. The first step is remove the brass plunger out of the tube magazine. We'll lay it up there. This rifle has been safety cleared for live ammunition and everything previous. So to start the field stripping process, you have to remove the 2 screws, action screws. So you have the front and the back, and upon previous inspection of this rifle, this particular rifle is missing the rear action screw, and I have ordered one from the manufacturer to replace that with after this project. You also have that screw that they added in the later models to sturdy the wrist. It has no purpose though, other than that. We're going to remove these 2, this front takedown screw, and that rear screw there, just to do it. So get my flathead screwdriver. I'm just undoing the action screw in the front. So the next step is we're going to separate the barrel and the stock and the action away from. So there's those 2. I don't know if you can see down in there, but that is filthy dirty too. I'm just gonna set that up in my bench vise for now. And here is the action. Now you have the action and some major dirt caked up in here. Looks like it could be a spider's nest. All that is dirt. So next, remove this pin here at the back, and we just push it through. It holds your hammer, or no, not your hammer. Yeah, your hammer. I don't know what I'm thinking today. And your action switch, along as your lifter. So that is your main action assembly, and now you have this open to where you can finish the process. Bolt carrier assembly. So there's your bolt handle, which I'm going to set here. It just comes whenever you slide the bolt assembly back, it just sets on the top of it. And slide the bolt assembly out. You have your extractor and you have the firing pin. So there's your main parts to your field strip and your main action parts in the cycle of operations. You have the bolt handle, the firing pin spring, the firing pin, the bolt carrier itself. You have your action, which houses your hammer and the sear, and your lifter, and then you have your trigger assembly, which houses your trigger, and you have a magazine tube or a plunger here,